Composition of the Killer fans. Dr. Cassidy here. Today we're going to be talking about John Venables and Robert Thompson. And this is part of that series that I'm doing on juveniles who are violent offenders or serial killers. As always, nothing that we talk about in this podcast is to be considered a clinical diagnosis. And I will also say that this is a particularly graphic story, and there may be some triggers for people. So I just want you to be aware of that prior to listening. We're just going to focus on this one today because it's quite the story and it's very long. Lots of information. Millie Kate is joining us again, so the weird noises in the background will likely be her. All right. So these two boys, they were 10 years old at the time of this abduction, torture, and murder. And the murder happened February 12th of 1993. The victim was James Patrick Bulger, and he was 2 years old. This also happened in the UK. So this was in Liverpool, Merseyside in England. The victim, James, he was a 2-year-old boy from Kirby, Merseyside, England, who was abducted, tortured, and murdered. He disappeared on February 12th from the New Strand shopping centre, Bootle, while accompanying his mother. His mutilated body was found on a railway line in nearby Walton on the 14th of February. Thomas and Venables were charged on February 20th. They were found guilty on November 24th of 93, making them the youngest convicted murderers in modern English history. They were sentenced to custody until they reached adulthood, initially until the age of 18, and were released on lifelong license in June 2001. This case prompted widespread debate on the issue of how to handle young offenders when they are sentenced or released from custody. Again, very long story. I mean, there's so much to it, and it just seems like it goes on and on. And I just feel so bad for the family of Bulger, who really won't see any. They just won't see any peace. So I don't know. It's really, again, not one of the more disturbing stories that I've read. So here's how they were caught. There was closed caption television evidence from the New Strand shopping centre taken on that February 12th that showed Thompson and Venables casually observing children, apparently selecting a target. The boys were playing truant from school, which they did regularly. Throughout the day, Thompson and Venables were seen stealing various items, including sweets, a troll doll, some batteries, and a can of blue paint, some of which were found at the murder scene. It was later revealed by one of the boys that they were planning to find a child to abduct, lead him to the busy road alongside the mall, and push him into the path of oncoming traffic. That same afternoon, James Bulger, often called Jamie by the press, although his family did not call him Jamie, went with his mother Denise to the New Strand shopping center. While inside a butcher's shop at around 3:40, Denise realized that her son had disappeared. He had been left at the door of the shop while she placed an order and was spotted by Thompson and Venables. They approached him and spoke to him before taking him by the hand and leading him out of the precinct. This moment was captured on closed caption television camera, and it was time-stamped at 15:42. So that's 3:42. The boys took Bulger on a 2.5-mile walk across Liverpool, leading him to the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, where he was dropped on his head and suffered injuries to his face. The boys joked about pushing Bulger into the canal. During the walk across Liverpool, the boys were seen by 38 people. Bulger had a bump on his forehead and was crying, but most bystanders did nothing to intervene, assuming that he was a younger brother. 2 people challenged the older boys, but they claimed that Bulger was a younger brother or that he was lost and they were taking him to the local police station. At one point, the boys took Bulger into a pet shop from which they were ejected. Eventually, the boys led Bulger to a railway line near the disused Walton and Anfield Railway Station, close to Walton Lane Police Station and Anfield Cemetery, and this is where they attacked him. At the trial, it was established that at this location, one of the boys threw blue Humbrol modeling paint into Bulger's left eye. They kicked him and hit him with bricks, stones, and a 22-pound iron bar, described in court as a railway fish plate. They placed batteries in his mouth. Bulger suffered 10 skull fractures as a result of the iron bar striking his head. Alan Williams, the case's pathologist, speculated that Bulger suffered so many injuries that none could be isolated as the fatal blow. Police also suspected that there was a sexual element to the crime since Bulger's shoes, stockings, trousers, and underpants had been removed. The pathologist's report read out in court stated that Bulger's foreskin had been manipulated. When questioned about this aspect of the attack by detectives and the child psychiatrist Eileen Vizard, Thompson and Venables were reluctant to give details. This is 10-year-old boys. 10-year-old boys. Before they left him, the boys laid Bulger across the railroad tracks and weighted his head down with rubble in the hope that a train would hit him and make his death appear to be an accident. After Bulger's killers left the scene, his body was cut in half by a train. Bulger's severed body was discovered 2 days later on February 14th, and a forensic pathologist testified that he had died before he was struck by the train. The police quickly found low-resolution video images of Bulger's abduction from the Strand shopping center by 2 unidentified boys. As the circumstances surrounding the death became clear, tabloid newspapers denounced the people who had seen Bulger but had not intervened to aid Bulger as he was being taken through the city, and they referred to them as the Liverpool 38. And honestly, I don't mean to sound like I'm judging these people. I don't know exactly what I would have done in this situation. But 38 people and only 2 people said anything at all? I would really like to think that there are people out there who would intervene regardless of risk to themselves on behalf of a 2-year-old child. And it's not as if he was being led away by adults, a large man or someone who you might be, scared of. This was 2 10-year-old boys and a 2-year-old boy. And it was suspicious. It was very suspicious, but no one approached them. And again, I wasn't there. I've not had to experience that, thank God. But I just feel like the humanity in someone of those 38 could have stopped this. The railway embankment upon which his body had been discovered was flooded with hundreds of bunches of flowers following the announcement that his body was found. The crime created great anger in Liverpool. The family of one boy who was detained for questioning but subsequently released had to flee the city. The breakthrough came when a woman, on seeing slightly enhanced images of the 2 boys on national television, recognized Venables, whom she knew was truant with Thompson that day. She contacted police and the boys were arrested. The fact that the boys were so young came as a shock to investigating officers headed by Detective Superintendent Albert Kirby of Merseyside Police. Early press reports and police statements had referred to Bulger being seen with 2 youths, suggesting that the killers were teenagers, and the ages of the boys being difficult to ascertain from the images captured by CCTV, because, recall, they weren't very clear. Forensic tests also confirmed that both boys had the same blue paint on their clothing as found on Bulger's body. Both had blood on their shoes. Blood on Thompson's shoes were matched to Bulger's blood through DNA tests, and the boys were charged with Bulger's murder on February 20th. They appeared in the South Sefton Youth Court on February 22nd and then were remanded in custody to await the trial. In the aftermath of their arrest and throughout the media accounts of their trial, the boys were referred to as Child A, who was Thompson, and Child B, who was Venables. At the close of the trial, the judge ruled their names should be released because of the nature of the murder and the public reaction. and they were identified along with lengthy descriptions of their lives and backgrounds. Public shock was compounded by the release, after the trial, of mugshots taken during questioning by the police. 500 protesters gathered at South Sefton Magistrates Court during the boys' initial court appearances. The parents of the accused were moved to different parts of the country and assumed new identities following death threats from vigilantes. And that's another victim in this. The parents of these murderers, all reports about these two boys' childhoods weren't that bad. And it makes me wonder, of course, what was the catalyst in this? And their parents, their entire world was upended. And just to know that you had reared a child who could be capable of such a heinous act would have to be absolutely devastating. So the boys denied the charges of murder, abduction, and attempted abduction brought against them. The attempted abduction charge related to an incident at the New Strand shopping center earlier on the 12th of February, the day of Bulger's death. Thompson and Venables had attempted to lead away another 2-year-old boy, but had been prevented by the boy's mother. And this shows intent. I mean, this shows intent. If they weren't successful the first time, many would logically give up. Yeah, this wasn't meant to be. I'm not doing this. This is a bad idea. But no, they intended to find a target that day. And they did, of course. Each boy sat in view of the court on raised chairs so they could see out of the dock, which was designed for adults, and they were accompanied by 2 social workers. Although they were separated from their parents, they were within touching distance when their families attended the trial. News stories reported the demeanor of the defendants. These aspects were later criticized by the European Court of Human Rights, which ruled in 1999 that they had not received a fair trial by being tried in public in an adult court. One of the things about these juveniles, when they determine typically if they're going to be charged as adults or juveniles, is the simple answer to, do they know the difference between right and wrong? Did they know that their actions towards Bulger were wrong? And so, they determine, and then there are mitigating factors which also help determine that. Do they have a mental disability? Do they have an extensive background of abuse and neglect? Those things are all also considered. But the basic question, which we'll talk about in a moment, is, do they realize what they did was wrong? Know the difference between wrong and right? So, at the trial, the leading prosecution counsel, which was Richard Henriquez, QC, successfully rebutted the principle of doli incapax, which presumes that young children cannot be held legally responsible for their actions. The child psychiatrist, Dr. Eileen Vizard, who interviewed Thompson before the trial, was asked in court whether he would know the difference between right and wrong, that it was wrong to take a child away from its mother, and that it was wrong to cause injury to a child. Vizard replied, "If the issue is on the balance of probabilities, I think I can answer with certainty." Vizard also said that Thompson was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder after the attack on Bulger. So she's saying that he also endured some major trauma from actually acting this out. And it makes me question, what exactly was his role in this? Was he just a follower? Did he just assist in this? Or did he actually participate in the torture and murder of this child? Dr. Susan Bailey, the Home Office forensic psychiatrist who interviewed Venables, said unequivocally that he knew the difference between right and wrong. Thompson and Venables did not speak during the trial, and the case against them was based to a large extent on the more than 20 hours of tape-recorded police interviews with the boys, which were played back